Hi, welcome to another demonstration for the Unitrends System Administration course. In this how-to video tutorial, we're going to look at creating and managing NAS backup jobs. I've got a couple of NASs in my environment here. We showed you how to add those assets in the asset management. We showed you how to add NAS assets in the asset management section in that module. So I'm just going to log back in here to my local source. Once again, I'm going to log in as my local user here. Once you're logged in here, obviously every time you log in, you're going to check to make sure you don't have any outstanding alerts and check for any errors. You'll notice in here these errors are from SQL. I've already dealt with these errors, so I'm all set. Inside of here, under the configure area, in the asset management, we showed you how to register these assets using either CIFS or NFS protocols and read-write credentials to that share on the IP address, right? And we've got two NASs that we've connected inside of here. Two different sets of NASs, two different types of data, and we're going to show you how to manage the backups for these NASs. You can see them here, once again, in the list of protected assets. They look a little bit different than the Windows agent and the normal Linux agent icon as well, too. You can see that slight difference in there. When we also, once again, look at our dashboard, we can click on either the not protected or protected in here, and you'll see a list down here of all of the assets. Now, if you filter this out by false, okay, and then maybe you want to look at the name of the client, which might be your NASs. Here you can see both of my NASs are registering false. I do not have a full for either one of these. And then if I do the same thing down here and I try to filter on the backup section, you can see that none of the NASs are scheduled or part of any schedules either. You can see everything else that has a schedule against it, all of the other assets, and the NASs are not listed in here yet. So there's no protection rules, no backup schedules, no backup jobs against those NASs. And that's what we're going to show you how to create. Kind of the first rule of thumb here, when you think about managing and creating a new job here and you go to the Jobs tab in the Job Manager, the first thing you kind of have to think about when you think about managing and creating NAS backups is if you have multiple NAS objects, you have to create a backup schedule for each NAS individually, each NAS share individually. So when we go in to create a backup job, and we drop down to our NAS assets in here, you'll notice that you can see both of these. And if you accidentally check both, then you can't actually keep going here, and it won't let you save this schedule, right? Even if I leave this all on default and just even try to save it, it doesn't let me save it. And you'll notice it doesn't keep both of them checked over here too. You cannot create a NAS group schedule. It has to be one object or the other. So I'm going to have to cancel out of that schedule and go back in and start to create another one. But this time I'm only going to check one of these NAS options in here. I'm just going to do the NAS apps vol 1. So if I check that option, and I can use the edit here to go through and add exclusions. Like this happens to be a Windows share. So the recycle bin, the sysvol shows up, those two directories, I know I don't need them. I only need the data directories from within that NAS application share, right? These are the applications I'm sharing off of there. So I want the root of that directory, but minus, once again, the recycle bin and the sysvol. Those are coming from, the reason those are here is because it's a Windows volume and they show up on the Windows side, right? But I don't need those. So we're going to go ahead and save that exclusion list. And then we'll save it inside of here. Now you can see those exclusions are set here. I can go to next now, but you want to make sure that you're naming this based on the NAS name of this asset. So we're going to call this NAS apps vol 1, and you could be descriptive here and say week full 24-hour differential. And if you look at your schedule sheet, remember we have our Excel planning sheet that you're going to go through and identify your NAS objects, right? You've got your planning sheet here, and you're going to go through and identify your NAS apps vol 1, right? Or whatever NAS heads you have, whatever NAS shares you have, you're going to go through and create a schedule for that NAS based on each NAS name. So in here, you can see the NAS schedule that I'm going to run. It's going to be a Sunday master at 7, or a Sunday full at 7, and a differential weekdays at 7 as well, too. Okay, so we're going to do fulls with differentials, the only two types you can do. There's no incrementals across the NAS. We're going to do Sunday at 7 p.m., every Sunday at 7 p.m. Then you also want to make sure you change your date here to the first Sunday you want this to start. Once again, if I set this for now, it would start tonight at 7 p.m., and I don't want it to run a full tonight at 7. I want them to run on Sundays at 7. Now, we're going to choose Monday through Friday here, and we're going to make sure that we set this start time for 7 p.m. here as well for the differentials. Now, you do have the options here to change the internal storage. If you're on a UEB or a UB appliance that has multiple storage devices, you could choose a different storage. Recovery series, physical appliances, it's always the internal one device. Just leave it default. You can also turn on verification for these backups. It's an inline verification. It may slow the backup down a little bit, but if you need to verify these NAS backups, you can do that. There is a include job results and job failures options here. Once again, really recommended to leave these on so you get the summaries and you get the failures right away if there are any. And we'll go ahead and create this first NAS job here. All right, now we can see this NAS schedule down here. We can see the schedule that we're on. All right, a little bit more of the breakdown here. Sunday, 7 p.m. fulls with a differential Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. All right, you can see a little bit more of that breakdown right there. Now, we're going to go ahead and kick off this job and let this job run. You can see that it had never ran before. It's running now. It changes that timestamp over to running now. And then it's going to go ahead and run again tonight at 7 o'clock. But tonight's 7 o'clock will be a differential based on the schedule. It will have already ran its first full. This tonight will be a differential. Okay, now I see the job running over here in the active queue. Once again, you can view the details of this job, but you can see the progress in here. While this job is running here, we're going to go ahead and create our second job. Let's go to create a new job. We're going to go ahead down to the NAS objects. We're going to choose our NAS file volume. This is not a Windows directory type of a NAS, so you don't see any type of recycling bins or sysvols or temp directories. I'm not going to add any exclusions here. I may add a wildcard type of an exclusion like AVI, MP3, or iTunes type of extensions. You can do wildcards. And once again, check the NAS recovery module for some of those specifics on what you can and cannot do within these backups and inclusions and exclusions. I'm going to leave that and grab everything. So here on the next page, once again, I'm going to go ahead and name this a little bit more specific. So we're going to call this NAS File Vol 1 Week Full Daily. Well, actually, this will be a 24-hour diff, just once a day. Change this backup mode here to fulls with differentials. We're going to do Sundays, so on the March 6th for me at 7 p.m. And we're going to make sure that we run differentials once again Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. We're going to set this up on the same schedule. Right? That's going to start today at 7 p.m. Once again, options for storage and job results and job failures can be included as well. All right, we'll go ahead and save this schedule. Now, after this schedule is created, we can see this new schedule here in the Job Manager. Maybe you want to sort it by the name at the top, and here you can see my NAS file, Vol 1, Week Full 24-Hour Differential. You can see that same schedule. It's never been ran. It would kick off today at 7 o'clock at night if I just left it alone right now, and at 7 o'clock it would grab its first full. All right, I'm going to go ahead and kick this one off as well, too. All right, you can see now it flipped that time over to last run here at 6:03. Still going to run it tonight at 7 o'clock for its first differential now. All right, I can also view the details of these jobs over here. Here's the new file volume NAS job running here. It's starting to connect right now as well. This job is already copied about 1.5 gigs. You can see once again the progress bar, not very accurate. I know this NAS happens to be about 7 or 8 gigs, and it's got about a gig and a half done. The other one's already dropped off the list. So if I flip over to recent jobs over here, you can see that the backup full here for NAS file vol 1 is already done successfully. It's not a very big NAS at all. It's absolutely tiny. It's just here to show you the process. And once again, bare metal is not possible for a NAS backup. Right? We talked about that in the NAS backup module. But you can view the details of that job. You can go to your recover catalog. Once again, your backup catalog in the recovery tab. You can now see your NAS file volume icon right there. You can see that different icon, and here's your catalog. Right? You can restore files from this NAS. So here I can browse down into this mount point and put back any directory or any file I need to recover. Once again, check the NAS recovery module and demonstration for more details on how to recover from a NAS. All right, now I still got this other job that's running in here. I can still see this job running, so when this job is completed, we'll come back and take a better look at drilling down into these and how to really verify that your NAS backups are correct. We'll also take a look at those few final reports and the dashboard for you. All right, so here we can see that the NAS backups have all dropped off our active jobs list. Once again, we can go right over to the recent jobs over here, and we can see that the NAS apps vol here started back at 5:59 p.m. Then we ran some SQL transactions in between these two. But you can see now that this one is full, and it's successful as well, too. Once again, up here at the top, we can view the log details of this job, and we can see if there's any errors or any warnings that we need to pay attention to. It's usually the first place you'll come to see any errors that you might have or any warnings or issues that you might need to deal with. Once again, here, though, we're all successful. Everything looks good. So we can show you the next part, of really how to verify that these assets are now protected. All right, so really starting up here at the dashboard at the top, I can click on the protected side over here. You'll notice it said 24 assets are protected here. But if I run this report now, it says 25 here. You can see it's a different number at the bottom. If I filter once again over here on true, and I scroll down a little bit, you'll see the NAS apps here is protected. If I show all 50 records, I can now see the NAS file vol NAS as well too here. So both of those assets are now protected. Now because they're both part of a schedule, and they now also have backups against them, they now show up here in the backup section of the protection summary as well too. You can see both of those objects down here. You can see the schedules that they're a part of. Once again, you could filter on the client name up here and filter out your NASs there, and maybe you want to filter out your NASs here. Once again, from this angle, I now only see my NASs and what their statuses are across those. I really like this filtering here. Now, under the dashboard, if you go back now, you'll notice it still says 24 in here. Once again, this only refreshes every hour. So you may need to, if you don't want to wait for it to refresh on its own, you could click this refresh wheel up here. But you'll notice it doesn't refresh the report until you actually go and run the report and then go back to your dashboard. Now that is showing 26 assets because it's now counting the 2 new NAS assets that we are now protecting. So it now shows 26 assets here and 21 over here. It now shows 26 assets here and 21 assets over here at not protected. Now we can also go down the Protect tab here on the left. You'll see your NAS objects here. Once again, if you look at the appliance level, the system level, you can filter on successes only. And now at the bottom, you can see your 2 NASs here. And once again, you can filter here at the bottom on NAS as well. You could also click on individual NASs here, but there's the NAS filter. Once again, you can see the details over here of each of those jobs that run, and this is the same view you get from the Recent Jobs tab. That's the detail where you can find logging information if you need it. What log do I need to pull? What log level is it? Any kind of troubleshooting you might need to do is going to be in this detail. All right, you can also go to the Recover tab over here on the left. Once again, it's showing all assets. You can kind of see it by icon where your NASs are at. It's kind of a big hodgepodge of list, right? But this filtering over here is amazing. I really like the filtering. So if you know you're looking for your NAS objects, once again, just type in the name of it or any part of a common name if you want to look at all of them. Once again, the biggest thing over here is it only shows successes by default. So if you have failures or warnings, you need to make sure you take that checkbox off. I have a warning here for my Win 7 desktop that I can show. And we also have failures for our SQL main databases from a couple of days ago. Here you can see the failures here. If I have that success still on, it does not show any failures. That'd be the same thing for looking up NASs, right? We only have successful backups, so we only see those. If I had warnings or failures, I may need to take that success checkbox off to see those failures and warnings. Now, once again, you can recover from any one of these types of catalogs here. If I have any type of catalog that I need to recover from, I can highlight it, and there's the recover options up here at the top. Once again, check the NAS recovery module and demonstration for more details on how to recover NAS data. All right, you also have reports down here. This does show up in the protection summary. That's the same thing from the dashboard once again. Just make sure if you do run the protection summary manually, you go back far enough to get a good sampling of data. All right, that's that same thing running the dashboard. Make sure you go back at least like 7 days if you run it manually. Now, you also have the backup history report. The NASs will show up in here. I'm just going to go back so we get a sample of everything that we're running and show you how the filtering works in the backup history report. Once again, it's the asset name that you want to filter on, right? Because the NAS is common for me, and if I filter on those, I can see my NAS backups here. All right, that's probably the easiest way to get to that. I did notice that the NASs show up with the dashes over here too, but those aren't able to filter on those, so you can't use those dashes to see anything in here. Right? That really means that it's blank. You may be able to sort on it and bring those up to the top. That might help a little bit. And once again, it's really going to be filtering on the asset name, really gets you directly to the backup records for what you want to look at. I mean, it's much more powerful than our legacy interface reporting. Once again, the options up here to export PDF or CSV of any report that you run as well too. The NASs will also show up at the appliance level in the capacity report. There is no date range for this. It pulls the last full, the newest full for every asset that you have. But here you can see the NAS asset. This one's way under a gig. And then my other NAS backup is about 6 gigs. Now, once again, this asset report is before deduplication, before compression. It's what you have to put back in time of recovery. Now, obviously, we're doing inline deduplication underneath here. We're doing compression, so we're not using the same amount of space from the disk. Now, this is kind of what you have to look at if you need to keep 2 times this amount so you can get another master full on the system, right? Now, as your total space goes up once again, on a physical appliance, the more you put on the appliance, the less room you have for retention. On virtual appliances, you can go back there and add more storage to that internal pool and give yourself more retention as you grow. It's kind of the benefit of having a UB or a virtual appliance. You can keep adding more and more storage to it and retain as much as you want. But really, you're going to watch the capacity report with every asset you add, whether it's a NAS or an agent-based backup or even a virtual hypervisor snapshot also. Make sure you're paying attention to how big these assets are getting. And you can see here my NAS, once again, is about 6 gigs. So that's a pretty good overview for you for managing NAS backups.